Hi guys, today we're going to talk about volume. What volume is measuring the amount of space inside of an object, or the amount of space that the object takes up. Volume is dealing with three-dimensional shapes. So after you solve for your volume, it's always going to be talking about something in cubic units. In order to find the volume of a shape, if you know what the base shape is and you know how to find the area of the base shape, you're just going to find the area of that and then multiply it by the height of the figure. All right, there are different shapes that we're going to look at. The first one is a rectangular prism. So this right here, B equals B times H, this big B stands for area of the base. So if we look at our rectangular prism, the base shape is a rectangle. So to find the area of a rectangle, we would do length times width. And then, since we're doing volume, you're just going to multiply it by the height. It's like you're taking this base rectangle and stacking it up on top of itself. That's why you multiply it by the height. So this is the formula that you can memorize to find the volume of a rectangular prism. Length times width times height. Let's look at a couple of examples. So I look at my shape and I know it's a rectangular prism because the base shape is a rectangle. So I think, okay, length times width times height is how I would find the area. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write that formula down. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute in what I know. And what I know in this case is my length, width, and height. So I'm going to plug in 3, 5, and 2 into the formula. So substitute in what you know. All right, after I substitute in what I know, I'm then going to solve. All right, so in this case, I'm just multiplying 3 times 5 times 2, and I end up with 30. And after I solve, I want to make sure that I always label my answer. And you're going to label it with cubic units. All right, let's try one more. The next one, again, my base shape is a rectangle. So I'm going to start by writing my formula, length times width times height. I'm going to plug in what I know. So 7 times 3 times 3. When I put that in the calculator, I get 63, and then I'm going to label it feet cubed. And that's how you find the volume of a rectangular prism. Our next shape is a cube. So a cube is a special rectangular prism. It's special because its base, it's still a rectangle, but it's a square. Okay, and a square, we know the length and the width are going to be the same. And with the cube, the height ends up being the same also. So if we think about our formula of a rectangular prism, length times width times height, we're actually plugging in the same number for the length, the width, and a height. So it would be the side, 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 all being multiplied by each other. The same distance being multiplied by itself 3 times. So to make a simpler formula for a cube, you think side cubed, the side length cubed, because it's the same measure times itself 3 times. So if we look at our first example, again, write the formula, substitute in the length of the side of the cube, which would be 2, calculate it. So when you put this in your calculator, you can hit 2, and then remember, hit that caret button. That will give you that exponent that's higher than 2. So do 2, hit the caret button, and then hit the number 3, and you will get 8 as your answer, and label it centimeters cubed. All right, one more example. I have a cube again, and I know it because all 3 dimensions are the same. So I'm going to say side cubed. I'm going to plug in 1 for the dimension. And 1 times 1 times 1 would be 1 foot cubed, would be the volume of this cube. All right, we're not going to do too much with triangular prisms, but I just wanted to show you this because in the very beginning I had said that you could find the volume of any prism as long as you knew how to find the area of the base. So this is just showing you if you had a triangular prism, we would call it a triangular prism because see how your base, these are your bases, are triangles. So if you wanted to find the volume of this, you should remember from last year that the area formula of a triangle is half base times the height. And now since we're talking about volume, you would take the area of that triangle and then just multiply it by the height of the shape. And you would be able to find the volume of this. The same thing would apply like if you had a trapezoidal prism. If you found the area of the base trapezoid and you multiplied it by the height of the shape, you could find the volume of that. All right, I would like you to either pause the video or just go through and answer the following questions off to the side on Edpuzzle. Okay, the next shape that we're going to talk about is volume of a cylinder. So volume of a cylinder is where you have a base that is a circle. All right, the same thing, it's the same sort of thinking as when we were finding the volume of our prisms. If you find the area of the base and then multiply it by the height of the shape, you will find the volume. So if you remember from last year, if I have a circle as my base, the formula to find the area of a circle is pi r squared. So this right here is finding the area of the base shape. Now I'm going to multiply it by the height of my cylinder, and that will give you the volume. One thing that you have to remember this year is that we are not going to use 3.14 for pi. You have on your calculator a pi key, and that's what we're going to be using when we're finding the volume of these cylinders. Now, when we're using the pi key, do not actually hit the pi key or input the pi key until the very last step. All right, it's going to save you from having to write out really, really long decimals. When you hit it on the last step, that will give you your final answer. And then once you see your final answer, you can round it to whatever the directions tell you to. Okay, first example. So I have a cylinder. Just like our prisms, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to write the formula. And the formula for our cylinder is pi r squared h. Then I'm going to plug in what I know. So pi, again, I'm going to leave this as the symbol pi because I'm not ready to put this in the calculator yet. R stands for radius. Remember, the radius goes from the center of the circle to the outside of the circle. So 3 is my radius. I'm going to square that. And then I'm going to multiply it by the height of the cylinder. And the height is 4. So this is your substitution step. After we've substituted, now this is when you can type this in the calculator. Now you can put this whole entire thing in your calculator. Just make sure that you are including parentheses and you're typing it in just like this. All right, so step 3, you're going to calculate. And the last step is rounding. And label. Okay, now sometimes you are going to be asked to round your answer. Sometimes you're going to be asked to leave it in terms of pi. So this particular example, we are going to say we rounded to the nearest tenth. Okay. Now, let's do the next example, but let's leave it in terms of pi. All right, so I am going to write my formula. I'm going to substitute in what I know, but I'm going to leave pi written as pi. My radius is 3 again, and my height is 7. So if the directions say to leave it in terms of pi, the only thing that you are going to put in the calculator is this. So I'm going to put 3 squared times 7 in my calculator, and I end up with 63. Since it's in terms of pi, you're going to leave pi, the symbol pi, in your answer. So I would write 63 pi. You still need to label it meters and its volume, so cubed. So this right here is leaving your answer in terms of pi. All right, here's another example. Okay, we're still finding the volume of a cylinder. Now this one is just a little bit different than the last example, because when I look at this, I say, okay, my formula is pi r squared h. But when I look at my cylinder, I don't know the radius. The radius goes from the center of the circle to the outside, and all I know is the diameter, which is going across the whole entire circle. So what I have to do to find my radius is cut the diameter in half. So I'm going to think 12 divided by 2. So that means that my radius is 6. Okay, now that I know my radius, I can substitute it into the formula. So pi times 6 squared times 21. And I can put that in the calculator. And my calculator ends up saying 2375.04404, and it keeps going.